Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Katie Garner. Katie was born in New York and grew up in New Jersey. She has a degree in art history from Ramapo College and is certified to teach high school art. She hoards paperbacks, coffee mugs, and dog toys, and can be seen holding at least one of those things most of the time. Katie lives in a New Jersey river town with her husband, little boy, and shih-poo. You have to tell me, shih-poo, where she
Shih-poo.
writes. Shih-poo, okay, it's a type of dog, I'm assuming, where she writes books about women and their dark secret selves. Her second novel, The Family Inside, is coming out this month. Nice to meet you, Katie. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Danielle.
Absolutely. So before we get started, please tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about this super, super, super twisty book, The Family Inside.
Thank you. Well, The Family Inside, I wrote a few years ago, and it is about a woman named Iris Blodgett who is dealing with a lot at the moment. She's a single mom, a widow. Her husband mysteriously was murdered about 3 years ago. When the book starts, and she's also just losing her job and facing foreclosure. So it's like a lot of things happening to her
I
all at once.
know. I know.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, so she's like, well, I have an 18-year-old unruly teenage daughter. We're gonna have to live in my car. And so she confides in her new boyfriend, Hugh, all about the situation. And he says to her, well, I have a solution for you. I actually just sold my house and I moved in with my mom to help her renovate this dilapidated mansion because she walks with a cane and she doesn't want to hire anyone to come to the property to help. So you're welcome to bring your daughter and move in with us. And so, she's like, well, I have no other choice. So she goes with her
Right.
daughter to this house, and it's a surprise. It's not what she was expecting, and she was not expecting that her boyfriend's brother, sister, and sister-in-law were also going to be living in this estate with them. So lots of things ensue after
And
that.
then everything goes sideways. Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah.
yes. I mean, really, and yeah, we're not going to give too many details, but yeah, the house is quite like there's a solarium where the glass is broken and there's roof missing, and yet it's also sounds like it's like, a super beautiful house, and then there's a lot of mysteries and a lot of secrets. Kind of everybody there has got
Yeah, they
some
got
some
something going on.
some really dark, dark secrets. So,
Yeah.
so tell us, like, we were talking about this a little bit before we got on the air. A book with this many twists, I feel like has to be outlined. Are you an outliner?
I am like I'm a very big plotter and pantser.
Okay,
So I go a little like overboard with all of my books with outlining. Sometimes my outlines can be like 25,000 words.
oh my
And
gosh,
I
right,
know.
right, okay. So we call
So I'll
that
just like,
we call that sort of a draft, but okay,
yeah,
okay.
I just like go nuts. I write everything down and I don't go chapter by chapter. It just kind of like free flows. And then when I'm drafting, it kind of just like breaks naturally where I feel like it should end,
Sure,
like each
sure.
chapter. So yeah, I just pretty much write down. I have like 5 open documents at one time, just like characters, setting, summary, notes per character, and then like it's just a giant mess. And
Yeah,
then it is plotted, but I do change a lot on the way. Like
yeah,
I'll write
yeah.
something, right? And if it doesn't feel right, I'm not gonna stick to it because it's in my outline, you know?
Right.
So
So yeah, that actually I think is my process is a little bit more similar to that than either outlining or pantsing. But because you kind of feel like the characters at some point take on their own lives and you've set them
mhm.
in motion down a certain path. But then when they get down, you're like, wait, this doesn't, yeah, no, this no longer really feels right for this
Uh-huh.
character.
Yeah, and once you get to know them, it's like they kind of just take a hold of the story themselves and tell you where they want to go. And
Yes.
what I was telling my mom this, and she's like, I don't understand. I'm like, Mom, it just happens. Like, I don't know. Like, they become their own person in your head,
Yes,
like,
yes,
of course,
yes.
because you're amazing.
Oh,
Um,
well, that's very nice. Yeah. And generous. I do think they become their own people, and I do sometimes think that. And you have a little one, and I started writing when I had little ones too. And sometimes I always felt like the book is another person in the room. So you're trying to make dinner or fold laundry, and you've got a kid talking to you, and you're like, hold on, somebody else is talking to me over here, and your whole family looks at you sideways. So,
yeah,
how do you?
yeah.
Yeah, and you also work 4 days a week. So how do you sort of balance your? I think there's a lot, we have a lot of aspiring authors who listen to the podcast. And so they're everybody, most of us, I mean, very few of us are lucky enough to write full time, obviously, because and I am writing full time, which is, but I've done it for 20 years, 20 years without writing full time. So anyway, I'm finally there. But, with little kids and a husband and a family and, a job, like how do you fit it in?
Uh, well, it was a lot easier before my wonderful 3-year-old. Back then, I was like taking PTO days. I'm like, I want to write this week. And I would just like take days off and just write like
Yeah.
40,000 words in a week.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but
Yeah.
now it's like, I do work full time. I work 40 hours a week at a very, very boring office job, like a lot of other people. And then, it's hard because when you're done with work, you're just like, I just want to watch like TV for the rest of the day. Um,
Mindless, right. You want something
yeah,
mindless. And writing a
but you
novel
can't.
is not mindless, right?
Oh no, it's a labor of love. So
Yeah.
after I'm hanging out with my 3-year-old, pick him up from school, give him dinner, and then my husband thankfully comes home before 8. So then when he's home, I'm like, hi, bye, and I run
Right.
upstairs and work till like midnight. Just sometimes I just sit in front of the laptop and kind of sort things out in my head. Other times I write a couple chapters, and it all depends. And I'm very fortunate to have a supportive husband who gives me
Yeah.
Sundays. So Sunday is like my writing cave day.
I
And
love that.
yeah, I'm just free to, do whatever I need to do book wise.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I used to commute to San Francisco and I had this is how I can age myself. I had a BlackBerry with a little keyboard and on the bus home, I used to do casual carpool, you ride with other people into the city, which sounds so bizarre. But anyway, and then on the bus ride home, I would have my little, keyboard and my little BlackBerry and I would be, this is before I mean, I think it's probably before iPods, Jesus. Anyway, and I would just write, something that I could then copy and paste onto my computer and kind of make sense of. But it felt like, I had to sort of capitalize on every minute. I also had a very supportive husband, but, it was hard to like be away from each other on Sundays or whatever, to have like that. So like, when do we see our husbands then? At some point
yeah,
it's tricky. It's just a
it is.
tricky, I've always wished I was like that person who woke up at 5 a.m. and was like, I'll just write at 5 a.m. But at
Yeah.
5 a.m., I'm like dead asleep. That is like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
can't do that.
mm-mm.
And
But I used
it's
to write
it's
at night too. That was more my time.
yeah, and sometimes you fall asleep at your desk. At least I do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then I just wake up and I'm like, where am I? And then I just keep going. But it's funny when when you're driving, like that is time where even your brain is always going, even if you're listening to an audiobook and you have an idea, you got to just pick up your phone and videotape yourself with these thoughts. And then whenever you get a moment to just like transcribe it. And it's funny, I have
Totally.
notes like calendar, notes, email, weird videos that I made myself. Like you just have to like do it on the fly. And then that's where the 25,000 Word documents come from all my
Right.
notes.
Right. Well, and it's funny too because I think one of the smartest things somebody said to me was to keep a pencil and paper by the bed. And my husband was very sensitive to like light and noise, but I would just get the pen and paper, pencil and paper out and just write it. And the next day I'd be like, "Oh, what word is that?" But it was the way that I could. And nowadays, of course, I just would use a phone, but it was it was a way like because you think to yourself, oh, this is such a good idea. I will absolutely remember it tomorrow. And then you wake up and you're like, nothing. I got nothing. I
Oh
have
yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
So
The best is
yeah.
when you do that and then it autocorrects you and you're like, I have no idea what this autocorrected
Yes.
to.
I know that dang autocorrect. Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
would, and if when you write in like I would write in pencil because I found it was easier and quieter. But the sometimes your lines would cross over each other, and it was like a very drunk writing to try to figure out the next day. But so what number book is is your second book?
Yes, second published, and I think that is my eighth just written, just
Okay.
between, fun books and practice books and stuff. So, yeah.
That's a great thing to touch on. So I mean, because most of us in the world, I think, write up, and I have three that are also pre-books or whatever you want to call them. But it's like, how did you keep going? Because it's disheartening to write an entire book and file it in
Yeah.
a drawer.
Yeah. Actually, for the oh my God, I'm losing track now. Seven books, I think, before this one that didn't get published before the night ended. And they're in all different genres. And the first couple ones I didn't even know like what querying was or anything. I just did it for fun. And then once I started to try to query and I realized they were just like dead in the water, I kind of mourned for like 6 months. I would take time off and be like, I'm never doing this again. And then like after
Totally.
6 months, like another idea would come and I'm like, oh, I have to write this one. So that's how I kept going. I did quit, but then I always came back to it because it is hard and it is a labor of love. And normally you can't really make too much money. I'm not going to say everyone because there are some really successful
Of
authors out
course.
there.
Of course.
But yeah, it is something that is just something I just love to do. And I think I'll always kind of do it because those idea bugs just come and
Right.
I have to write it down. So
Right.
that's how it
And
all started.
it's almost like I think I sometimes look at it like a compulsion. Like there's one year in 2011 where I didn't write. I was working, but I wasn't writing novels. And I think my whole family later was like, that you were the craziest you've ever been, mom, sister, wife, that year. So it is like almost like it was a pressure valve that got, you know, and I remember having kind of a major meltdown that at Christmas that year. And my whole family they will literally be able to tell you the date, the year, because it was major. And I'd had a life crisis. And it just is like, even if I wasn't selling books, which, have 16 books out, but there were books in between that didn't sell. There were contracts that, it's not, this is not how the writing career goes. It is
Yeah.
absolutely like,
Oh
so,
yeah.
absolutely like that. But, I think, yeah, I feel like I have to do it. And even if I were just, I'd like to think, even if I was just doing it for myself, that I would do it. Although I really do hope that I can share it because you want someone to say, I read your story and, I enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Even if it takes you 3 years to write a book, like it's still, and you're still writing. That's what I'm facing right now is I think it's been 3 years I'm working on book number three. So yeah, I did take a couple of years off, when I was pregnant. And then for the first year of my son's life, I had like major, I don't know, like brain fog. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah,
It is
that's real.
serious.
That's
Oh yeah,
real.
and I had never heard of it until I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Like I can't even like concentrate on anything. Like you could tell me like a
Yeah.
number and I'd be like, what's a number? I yeah, so I couldn't even do that. I couldn't even, function day to day, let alone like
Yeah.
create story. So I
Yeah.
did have to take a couple of years off. And then one day I was like, I had this idea like before I got pregnant and it's just calling to me and like the clouds parted and I was like, I think my brain fog is over and I just like got to writing. So yeah, it did take a while, but luckily I'm mostly out of it now. Who knows? Maybe I
Yeah. I
got to the
mean,
point.
exactly.
I don't remember what I was like.
I think I think there's just stages. I mean, also I think some books just take a long time to write. The book that is going to come out for me next year, I started it in the pandemic. And I did actually I published a book. Well, in 2023, but that I'd written in between. But this particular book, Pinky Swear, it was just so much harder than any other book has been, which I'd like to think means it's different and better, but I guess who the hell knows? But yeah, I think some stories just and I also think, like you said, you can have an idea at some point, and sometimes it's just not ready to write yet.
Hmm.
You're not ready to, and I think that's been true for me too. I'm not ready to write my I'm not in the right stage of my life or whatever it is. It means the story has to wait a little
Hmm.
bit longer. So anyway,
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
all super interesting. So this
yeah,
book three, I mean, and you're with Mira. So are they, is your editor pretty, obviously they know you've got a little kid and you've got,
yeah.
and so they're obviously, because this is, when was your first book out?
2023, June.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
so you're publishing pretty regularly for with everything going on.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad to have The Family Inside published this month, January 2025. Um, I was like, oh, I want to avoid like the election and the
Right,
holidays. So
right,
I'll take
right.
January. Thank you. So yeah, it
Yes,
got pushed out a little farther. And I am amazed at authors who are able to publish a book a year, because I'm like, how do you do that?
right.
Um, it's just it seems really difficult, and I'm sure it is. I don't think I could ever do it while in this stage of my
Well, I was
life.
gonna say a
Uh,
lot of us have grown children and we're empty nesters and maybe not working or not working as much. So there's a lot of factors at play. So yeah,
oh yeah,
I think you can give yourself credit for getting as much done as you're getting done.
yeah, I could try, but we'll see. Yeah,
Well, we
but
encourage it. We have to give ourselves credit or this job is impossible. So,
that's
yeah.
true. Yeah.
So do you have a deadline for the third book?
No, I'm actually just working on it with my agent and some boutique partners right now.
Good.
I'm doing another round of revision because unlike my other two, this one, I don't know, I chose to just go. I think I have like four POVs and like three different timelines, and then I'm like, okay, wait a minute, like I think that's too much.
Right.
That's why it's so difficult for me to piece like and puzzle everything together. So I'm working now on just keeping like two POVs and cutting out some other
Yes.
people and
Yes.
figuring
Yes.
things out, because that's one of my weaknesses when I write is I like to kitchen sink it.
Uh-huh.
Because right, like, oh, this is cool and this is cool and I want to do this and I want to do this, and then it
And I
gets
could
like,
throw this twist in and I could use this
oh,
twist. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I have to simplify, otherwise it can get very convoluted. So that's what I'm trying to work with right
Yeah.
now, is calming myself down with this third
Yeah.
one.
Good for
Yeah,
you. Well, I mean, I
yeah.
think that's a real thing. I mean, it's also you want to be like you're like I can pull this off. I can make this work. And then you're like, okay, no, I can't. I can't pull this off.
Mm-mm.
I can't make this work.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or else at least I can't do it and retain my sanity. So, and
yeah, no.
that's key. Sanity is key. Well, that's exciting. Well, and so when you're coming up with your ideas, where generally do they come, where do they come from?
Actually, I have a document that's are you
A, d-
surprised? I
a
have a huge
document. Yes, I love
and
that.
in it, I write down everything that kind of like interests me,
Hmm.
just like small things I see on like a TV show or series or book or anything. And a lot of my like little nuggets of ideas come
Hmm.
from my fears in real life.
Of course, yeah.
So like mega spoilers for The Night It Ended is like I have a giant fear, as I'm sure a ton of other people do, of like home invasions
Yeah.
or family annihilators and
Hmm.
horrible true crime things like that happen sadly,
Right.
across the world. And then for the family inside, another fear was losing everything, as Iris
Yeah.
did.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know how
Mm,
people do it because, you
right.
know,
No, I think
sadly does happen.
that is true, especially in a situation like Iris with no family. You know what I mean? She doesn't
Yeah.
have siblings or anyway. So yeah, that is I think that's right. And I think that I remember my very first book is about uh well, hey, it's a serial killer book, but one of the scenes is about the detective's actual child, and not no child was harmed in the making or this book. So the kid's fine, but it is, and it was the book was published when my daughter was 8 months old, and it is absolutely that like especially early motherhood fear of like anything happening to my child. But almost the worst possible thing is that she disappeared and I didn't know what had happened to her, right? Like it's like the not knowing. And anyway, and now of course there's a million, I mean, we have a million things to be afraid of. But I
It's
think
true.
that's true. I think that's why we write what we write. I mean, I think it is true that like the stakes are the highest in thrillers, which is why I think, they're fun to write is, I mean, there really isn't anything bigger than life and death, right?
Yeah, that is so true. And you hear these true crime stories and you're just like, okay, it just seems so kind of far removed from you because it's happening to someone else. But is it really? That can happen sadly to anyone,
Yeah.
in any state, any country. So you just always have to be careful. So yeah, that's why writing thrillers kind of just like releases my fears. And
Yeah.
maybe it's like some way I can kind of control my fears too, because you're controlling the story, your own story, and try to have a somewhat happy ending on your own terms. So,
Yeah, it
and the
is. I
bad
think that's
guy,
right.
yeah,
So
and the
I
bad guy
actually,
has to be caught.
yeah, of course, right. He has to pay or she has to pay.
Yeah.
And so sounds like I haven't listened to a lot of true crime. I think it's too dark, which is so weird to say as a thriller author whose first book was compared to Silence of the Lambs, that probably seems strange. But I do feel like I guess just knowing that it has happened is so much harder in my brain than thinking, oh, it's fiction.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
there are some terrifying stories out there. And every time I like finish listening to a true crime story, I'm like, why do I do this to myself? Because I'll just be
yeah,
crying, like,
right,
why? Like,
right.
I keep
And it's
coming back though.
I know. Well, I mean, I think a lot of women love true crime, and I think that part of the reason is that we're trying to figure out how we would, we're like it's like reading all the things you shouldn't do, right? It's like you're reading the guy, like how to stay alive. Here are the guidelines. This is what you shouldn't do because this is how this woman died, or whatever. I mean, I think it's
Hmm.
again, it makes so much sense that we're
Yeah.
working it against our worst
That is
fears.
true. That is true. And you try to like put yourself in that position, like, I would never do that. It's like, well, who knows how you would react in some of these situations. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway, we're in a strange business for sure.
Oh, yeah. The FBI they're going to knock on our doors when they see our search history.
Yeah, I've had that thought for a lot of years, and I'm sure I am on some lists, but at this point, hopefully they figured out why. If they're doing their research. Well, this is Katie, it was so fun to talk to you about the family inside. Now, have you kept your own titles? I feel like half people like they don't get to keep their own titles. Are these your titles?
I've been very lucky. The Family Inside was my original title. The Night It Ended was not my original title, but that's all right because it
Yes,
worked
I
out.
feel like
Yeah.
50, if you get half, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But there are funny things. I'm trying to come up with a title for the book I'm working on now, and I'm just hoping somebody smarter than me can figure it out when it's written. So
It's always fun to brainstorm it.
it
Yeah.
is. You think that like two or four words through would be the easiest part of the book. I think the title is the hardest part of the book,
That's
which is
true. That and the
insane.
elevator pitch.
Oh, right, you're right. That's the tagline thing is the hardest. You're totally right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hard parts, actually.
There is.
Oh, thank you, Katie, for joining us. Everybody, this was Killer Women with Katie Garner. Check out our Facebook page. We'll be giving a copy away here soon, and we will see you all next time. Bye.